Alabama football recruiting is on a roll for 2026, but it's a roll nonetheless.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. And thank you for making this your first listen every single day. You guys are the absolute best. We appreciate you so much. In fact, I'm going to throw out that I met a guy named Dwayne this weekend who listens to the show and appreciate him. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. And I'll tell you where I met Dwayne here in just a minute, but I know we want to get to some stuff. First of all, to Dorian Barney. What a name. First of all, I mean, I've heard a lot of Dorians. You don't hear a lot of dudes last name Barney. And in the description for this podcast, I'm calling him Dorian the Dinosaur Barney. I don't know if that's going to stick. But I mean, Barney the Dinosaur. It doesn't work if I go Dorian Barney the Dinosaur. That doesn't work. So, but tell us about him because he's another defensive back. It's like we're going to go year to year. Okay, 25 is the year of Alabama signing every linebacker we possibly can. In 2026 so far is load up in the secondary.
Yeah, I wouldn't even be surprised if the next commitment is a DB, by the way, in the 26 group. Yeah, it is a little bit of a coincidence, I guess, that the first two commitments in the 2026 class would both be from DBs. Juice Gordon on successive days. Juice Gordon from Jackson, Alabama commits a couple of days ago, safety type prospect. I think he might even be a nickel corner at Alabama, but Dorian Barney is absolutely just a straight up cornerback. On three ranks him the number 3 cornerback in the nation from Sewanee in Georgia. Outstanding prospect, had to beat everybody to sign him. I mean, everybody's offered Dorian Barney. He's a national elite guy. I think that stands a good chance to end up national top 50. I think Juice Gordon will end up national top 100. That's a prediction down the road, because I've always been super high on Juice, but Dorian Barney's already a national top 50 guy with on 3 straight up cornerback. Had to beat Georgia to get him from Atlanta. I'll tell you who to give a lot of credit to for both of these guys, Luke, and that's new cornerback coach Mo Linguist. Mo was instrumental in recruiting both Juice and Dorian Barney. They both cited Mo Linguist in interviews as guys that impressed them and that they wanted to play for Mo Linguist. I felt Mo would be a really good recruiter coming from University of Buffalo as a head coach, but he also spent some time in the NFL coaching the Dallas Cowboys. Things like that catch these kids' attention big time. I mean, when your position coach has also coached that position in the NFL and he's been a head coach, he's just a tremendous asset to the program and has a lot to do with this early 2026 success. Just notable, Luke, also the staff is seeing today a 2026 cornerback from Gadsden that they're really high on. I don't know that he's anywhere near ready to commit, but my understanding is he's a very high priority for Alabama.
By the way, it'd be just awesome if Mo has a brother named Les. That would be fantastic. Please have a brother named Les. Mo Linguist and Les Linguist. I'd love that. That would be fantastic. I want to tell everybody really quickly because I did. This is apropos of nothing, but this weekend my nephew was playing in a AAU thing, and it's like the 7th grade, right? So I mean, you don't expect to see a lot of prospects. That's where I saw this guy Dwayne, who just like out of nowhere he said, "Hey, Locked On Bama," and fist bumped me, and I appreciate you, Dwayne. I didn't get your last name, but you know who you are. And but boy, Jimmy, some of these AAU dudes, even in that classification, even in that age group, there's a kid named Jalen that plays on my nephew's team. He's probably 6'2", and his legs are longer than mine already. I'm 6'5", and his arms are at least as long as mine already. And he doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, like he's still like, 7th grade. So, I mean, he doesn't know what all he can and cannot do. He can dunk. He didn't dunk in a game, but he can dunk in 7th grade. And it's just ridiculous. I mean, I was just blown away. I mean, I was like, some of these kids look like 7th graders playing 7th grade basketball. Some of these dudes look like, okay, in 2 years, this guy's going to be a problem for everybody. like the Pistons. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there, and because when a listener sees us, we love to say that we appreciate you
His
reaching
name
out.
is Jalen. He's probably going to get an Alabama offer on that alone. We seem to
Yeah,
do really well with the Jalens.
I think his name is actually Jalen Williams, who Auburn and he's from the Auburn area, and so Auburn just lost to Jalen Williams. No relation, but I think that's his name. I was super impressed with him and what he's going to be in just a bit. I mean, again, he's got a long way to go, but he's in 7th grade, and I was like, that dude's a dude. I mean, he's going to. So just you heard it here first. You know, Luke's telling you some 7th grader in Auburn's going to be a problem. So. But going back to this commitment, so it's just interesting, that we do get 2 cornerbacks, and as you say, there could be another cornerback in the works. I mean, you're not predicting, and neither am I, an imminent commitment from the kid in Gadsden, but it feels like this staff is. It's not. It wasn't too long ago. I was looking at YouTube. I've really gotten hooked on YouTube now that we are on YouTube. And so in the shorts, there was that old episode with my buddy, Zach Blackerby, who runs Locked On Auburn, and he was meeting with the Locked On recruiting expert. And this is from a few weeks ago, but it was that one short that they put out where the recruiting expert was like, man, I don't know what Alabama's doing. I mean, it feels like they're not calling all the commits. I mean, it seems like they're sort of falling off. And literally 2 days later, Alabama gets a flurry of commitments. Now we've gotten 2 2026 commitments that are, probably ultimately going to be both top 100 guys. If you had doubts about this staff and their ability to recruit, up to this point, if you wanted to write off Ryan Williams as, okay, he's a dump and he was coming to Alabama or whatever, and if you wanted to write off Noah Carter as, well, he just, we don't know anything about him, he's from Arizona, whatever. If you wanted to write off some of that stuff, so be it. But these last few weeks should have solidified everybody's belief that, okay, he's not Nick Saban. Nobody ever will be. I'll say that for the 1,000th time. But he's about as good a recruiter as we got going. Now, is he Kirby Smart? Probably not. But other than that, I mean, I'm going to put this staff up against anybody.
Yeah, I think so far the results are very promising in terms of Kalen DeBoer and his staff in terms of recruiting. I mean, there won't be a fair verdict until signing day. I don't think what happened last signing day, even though they were able to get Ryan Williams late, that was hugely significant. But I don't think you can really grade Kalen DeBoer and his staff on recruiting until signing day in December comes. Then I think it's fair because they've had a full year to recruit this class. Probably not as fair a look as it will be in future classes, but it's fair this December. Until then, it's really just a lot of speculation and guessing as to what's going to happen. But overall, I would give them a very good grade. Getting back to what you said, Luke, a second ago about that comment on the Zach Blackerby show when he talked to the recruiting expert, I think that all emanated, my take on it, I think that all emanated because there's a high-profile player in the state of Alabama who's highly rated, but it doesn't feel like this staff felt like he's a great prospect or great enough to push for a commitment. They want that kid to come to camp instead of, hey, you're a take for us right now. They want him to come to camp. And I think that surprised Auburn and some other observers of recruiting because other programs kind of fall all over themselves for this guy. And I think, and who knows, only time will tell as to who's right. There's also a scheme fit issue with front seven guys. Is he a good fit in the particular scheme Alabama's going to run? That's a question with everybody out there. Everybody runs a different looking front seven, and different high school kids can be bad, a good fit one place and a bad fit somewhere else schematically. So I think that really all happened because of one kid. And it just surprises people when a national top 100 player isn't viewed as a take by a certain program. But that happened all the time. That even happened under Saban all the time. It's just sometimes we fans know about it and sometimes we don't.
And by the way, just adding in their ability to recruit and reach on a national level, they're also talking to the number 2 recruit out of Arizona, Rylan Dillard Allen, a 4-star safety. Top 400 kind of guy. He's probably not going to sneak into the top 100 ultimately, but he's a good player, 4-star. And again, I just love to have that kind of reach. And, I just think this staff is doing a great job. And speaking of doing a great job, we're going to give you an update on Khalil Jacobs next. I think.
Okay.
Boy, I hate when that thing has that delay. I really do.
Really?
But you know what I don't hate? LinkedIn.
LinkedIn jobs.
Love me some LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you ain't looking in the right place, bro. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions, they'll apply. So a Khalil Jacobs update, Jimmy. I haven't seen anything concrete anywhere. I mean, obviously he's the linebacker transfer from South Alabama, went to Auburn and visited. A lot of people thought he'd go to Auburn. Well, it didn't work out. I think that was more a Khalil Jacobs versus an Auburn thing. And so he's obviously looking at Missouri too. But I think Alabama could use him, would love to have him. How do you feel about it after this weekend?
I think that's more possible than I thought before about Khalil Jacobs at Alabama. I'm not ready to predict that. We're not predicting that at BOL yet of Khalil Jacobs to Alabama, but he arrived either late Saturday night or early Sunday morning for his visit. My understanding is we taped this on Monday morning that Khalil Jacobs is still in Tuscaloosa right now, and we're just awaiting maybe an interview from Joseph Hastings or Andrew Bone. Once Khalil Jacobs leaves the campus, Joseph Hastings and Andrew Bone at BOL will be able to tell us more about where Alabama stands. But I think the general feeling right now is pretty good about Khalil to Alabama. It's just a little complicated for 2 or 3 reasons. Number one, Alabama's low on spots. Is there room? That's one on Alabama's end. So that's their big question. And then the big question on Khalil's end is playing time. I mean, this is an inside linebacker who's leaving a situation, Luke, where he was the best player for the Jags. He's the best player on South Alabama's defense. He's going to be the star of the show. So he wants to transfer to play on a bigger stage. Well, at Alabama, we have 2 starting inside linebackers in Deontay Lawson and Jahad Campbell. Khalil's a good player, but he ain't beating out Lawson and Campbell. No one is. Those guys are just dudes. So at Alabama, he would kind of be, barring injury to Deontay or Jahad, he would be kind of sitting as a reserve player and a special teams player and just getting some occasional snaps. At these other schools like Auburn and Missouri or even Ole Miss, who's interested in Khalil, he might be a starter, an immediate starter at those places. So now he does have 2 years of eligibility, so he could be a backup at Alabama for a year and a starter in 2025. But that's the decision for him to make. And the decision for Alabama to make is just simply, do we have the room? How are we going to make this work? How are we going to make this fit? So it's up in the air, but as of this morning, I think there's more positivity than there was maybe early last week.
Well, that's good. I think it'd be good to get this guy here and it add some depth. It would be a monster positive. And look, it also looks like it'd be considered a recruiting win. I don't know where he ranks in the transfer rankings, but I don't think it matters. I mean, he's one of those pieces. Yeah, he's a good player. So I would certainly love to have him. And Jimmy, before we go to our next break, and then we're going to do 2 guys in your countdown, I do want to give a shout out to the baseball team for look, I said that Auburn would win 2 of 3 at the very least. That's exactly what happened because Auburn treated this like it was the World Series, and I don't blame them. I'm not picking fun. I don't blame them at all. They had nothing else to play for except beating Alabama and trying to hang their hat on that. If we had played Auburn mid-season, I think we might even sweep them. But this last bit, when they had nothing else going for them, they needed to get at least 2 of those, and they did. But give Alabama credit for whipping them on Sunday or Saturday. And then give Alabama credit for winning their super regionals. It wasn't the toughest super regional in the world. You could make an argument Alabama didn't even deserve a regional. I said super regionals. I meant regional. They're on their way to the super regionals to play a Tennessee team that is beating the brakes off of everybody. Best of luck, girls. I hope you pull it out. It's going to be a very difficult task. But Alabama at least ended with a flurry of offense that they haven't shown up until I guess it was yesterday. And they ended up playing mighty well. I want to tell you one other story from the AAU thing I went to. So it was just hilarious. My nephew's team was playing this other squad, and my nephew's team didn't win it all, but they're a pretty good squad. And again, I mentioned Jalen, great player. They have another kid named Desmond, really good player. And they're just bigger than everybody for the most part. But they were playing this one team, and they were just beating them mercilessly. And it was the coach for the other team was so exasperated. I found myself just watching him versus watching the game. And my brother and I just sat there and just watched him because it was hilarious. He kept walking the coach's area. And then he finally, I've never seen a coach do this. He comes over, like the bleachers are behind one of the goals. He comes over to us and goes, like it was, Jimmy, I'm not kidding. It was like 50-13. And he comes over and goes, there ain't going to be no practice next week. I'm sorry. Everybody's sorry. And he walked back to his area. Like he came up to the parents and said, all y'all's kids are sorry, and I'm sorry that I'm here. And then when it was like even worse, I've never seen a coach do this. He was, how coaches always sit towards the front near the scorer's table, right? Mm-hmm. He walked to the end of the bench and sat down next to the player that is, I guess, the worst player on the team that never plays. And it was like that player was bored. He was sitting there like this with his hands in it. And he turned around. And he's like, what are you doing here? Like the coach is over there. He had his face in his hands. And he was like at the end of the bench. He's like, I don't even want to be considered the coach here anymore. I want to sit down here where they think I'm some other role. I just thought that was so funny. I was just having a laugh.
I'm not around it, but it's easy for me to imagine that some of these AAU coaches act like it's the Timberwolves and the Nuggets and the NBA playoffs, and they're playing for Game 7 and a spot in the conference finals.
Dude, let me tell you, that's one thing. The other thing, one of the other games that I saw my nephew play in, the parents. Now, again, I'm trying not to be biased. It's the first time I've been to any of this. But like the parents from my nephew's team, they all seem pretty reasonable. And they, every now and again they go, that's a foul. One of the teams they played, their parents were losing their minds. Moms, dads, aunts, uncles, whatever. They were losing their mind. I can't believe you. Ref, you're so dumb. You're so dumb. And I was like, you can't, wow. You couldn't pay me enough to go out there and take this abuse. They probably make $20 a game, these officials. And it's an AAU thing. It doesn't count for anything.
I'm stunned that anyone volunteers to do that job in today's world, that anyone volunteers to officiate these young kids' games, because all they do is take abuse for no money. And it's just constant abuse and gosh.
That goes for high school too, by the way.
Yeah, parents.
Those dudes might make $75 a game, and you say, well, that's not bad. You get to watch football. They just get verbally abused. And now with social media, people put their names up. Anyway, look, we don't need to go off on that tangent because we could stay on it for a while. Instead, I'm going to tell you a tangent we go off on, and that's a FanDuel tangent. Segue of the year. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own, and I'm talking about a financial kind of win. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and much, 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 much more. That's $150. $150, y'all. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, of course, is America's number one sportsbook. Countdown time. Yo. And now we have worked our way up to, and I find this interesting, the order you have these two, I'm going to tell you number 76. And then when we get to 77, I'm going to tell you why I think you've got maybe him too high and the other one too low. The number 76 is Dre Kirkpatrick Jr.
Yeah, I am really high on Dre Kirkpatrick Jr. I'm probably his biggest supporter out there in the media. I mean, in terms of like waving the flag for this guy and saying that he's underrated and underregarded. I thought he had, from what I hear and what I saw on A-Day, he had a really nice spring. Kind of a weird situation because most guys that are the sons of NFL players, they are often sometimes overrated because everyone knows, oh, this guy's going to be great. He's so-and-so's son. He's going to be just as good as his dad. And a lot of times those kids get overrated and get almost too much attention. And a lot of them are great players from a very young age due to just DNA alone. But with Dre Jr., you sort of have the opposite here. Here's a kid that I think was largely underrated, particularly in his senior year. I don't think he was properly ranked until late in his career. He was just a late bloomer. You don't often hear the term late bloomer with son of an NFL player. But I think that's exactly what we have with Dre and why he's a little underregarded. Now, he's the safety position at Alabama is pretty well stocked right now. I still have him low in the team rankings. I project Dre to redshirt. I do think he's a kid that could play, and he might play. But Alabama already has Malachi Moore and Keon Sabb. They will be the starters at safety. Devontae Smith, Red Morgan, who's going to rank much higher. He had a fantastic spring. I think all that, and you signed Cam Howard out of the transfer portal, Matt King from Penn State, the Penn State transfer. So with all those guys, I think Dre it does redshirt, but I did rank him higher than many of the other projected redshirts, just showing you how high I am on Dre. I think Dre Kirkpatrick is a future starter at Alabama. In terms of when that might happen, I don't know, maybe 2026, but he's going to be a good player.
But I find it interesting, after all those accolades, you put him behind Arian Bubba Hampton, who is your number 75 player on the countdown. I would have now again, this is your countdown, you do your thing. Sure. I'm just saying, especially what I've seen from Dre Kirkpatrick in the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game, in the 8A game, I would have had Dre higher. Is this a depth thing?
I think Bubba Hampton has a slightly, and there's just one spot. You're talking about 87 spots on the ranking thing. I have Bubba Hampton one spot ahead of Dre. The reason I have Bubba ahead of Dre by one spot is I think there's just a slightly better chance Bubba plays this fall. I think Dre is more likely to redshirt due to depth at that safety position. Whereas, as you know, even though there are 12 wide receivers on scholarship with Bubba's group, I think there's a possibility that maybe only one of the wide receivers redshirts, maybe two, maybe a lot of those guys play under the new offense with Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan. Alabama's likely to play more wide receivers each year than we're playing under Saban. So I'm just acknowledging that Bubba, who I believe will redshirt, he's still in my projected redshirt area. I just think Bubba has a slightly better chance to play this fall than Dre. That's why I have him ranked where he is. Also can't rule out Bubba possibly being involved in the return game as a possible kick returner, possible punt returner, which would certainly mean that I have him underranked on the list if that happens. I just consider it more of an outside possibility. But Bubba Hampton was there this spring. I wouldn't say that he had a noisy spring or one full of accolades or he lit it up or anything like that. I think it was just typical of a true freshman spring practice. But there's every reason to believe that Bubba's going to have a good career at Alabama. Let's remember that on signing day last December, Nick Saban, who signed Bubba Hampton, Nick was sort of raving about Bubba as one of his favorites in the group. So that Saban guy knew a thing or two.
Did Bubba Hampton do anything in the spring game? I don't remember.
No, nothing of significance in neither the spring game nor the scrimmages. That's why I'm projecting him to redshirt. But we're at that point of my projected redshirts where each kid that we now talk about has a better chance to play than the one before them. So, there's still some true freshmen to go here on that we'll be talking about in coming days. But we're getting to guys that maybe we will see them this fall.
Yeah, and interesting about the return, because one of the best returners there is out there is Ryan Williams, and I don't know if you put him at returner. I mean, maybe Saban always put the guy he thought was the most dangerous at return. He had Kool-Aid back there. He had Caleb Downs back there, at least for a game or two. He had Devontae Smith was a punt returner at times, right in the middle of his Heisman campaign. So maybe you put your best guy at return, but I'm just saying it's interesting because I guess my first inclination is, put your best guy back there. And my best guy would be Ryan Williams because this is a Ryan Williams podcast. But maybe, Bubba Hampton is an incredible athlete. He's been a good returner in high school. Maybe he is an option. And that way you don't risk Ryan Williams in the return game at all. But, I mean, the thing about people saying he shouldn't be back there returning kicks because he could get hurt. He can get hurt doing anything.
Yeah, he can get hurt crossing the street. He can get hurt in practice. He can get hurt playing wide receiver. He can get hurt playing special teams. His football players are going to get hurt. That's one of the things I learned so much about football from Nick Saban. I mean, to me, I think almost all of my football beliefs these days sort of came from Nick Saban. And I'm just a Nick Saban. If Nick Saban believed it, I'm on board. And one of the things Nick believed is playing his best players on special teams. I will always, from henceforward, go with the philosophy that you do play your best players on special teams. Hey, big time games are decided sometimes by one play. And who's to say that might be a special teams play? But if we're going to guess who the returner is going to be this fall, I agree with you. I think it could be Bubba. I think it could be Ryan Williams. My best guess right now in terms of primary return guy, though, I'm probably going to go with Jeremy Bernard as the most likely punt returner, kick returner.
Interesting. Okay, well, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more, probably some more countdown stuff. And, who knows, though? News is coming out fast and furious. You guys over at On3 just made Alabama the preseason #1 when it comes to basketball. That article just hit. So I'm looking forward to reading that. We may talk about that a little bit tomorrow. And until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.